Hello, welcome to today's immigration tidbit. So, did you come here illegally, get married to a U.S. citizen, or lawful permanent resident that turned out to be a U.S. citizen, or that became one, and you want to know if you can adjust status in the U.S.? Well, as many of you have heard, President Biden issued an executive order which will go into effect shortly, which may very well address your issue depending on the situation. In a case like this, normally, if you've been here for 10 years and minus some other requirements, you would first apply for what's called parole in place. That basically gives the fiction that you are then legally allowed to enter the U.S., even though you're theoretically already here. And then if that's approved, you could apply for adjustment of status. You would not have to do the waiver of the 10-year bar and would not have to leave the U.S. That, of course, is not yet put into effect. And there are issues as to what exactly it will be. So there is, of course, the current law, depending on your situation, as to what to do. And that would be that you would go through normal consulate processing, and assuming you're not inadmissible on any other ground other than the 3 to 10 year bar, you would do the provisional waiver of inadmissibility. Now, what does all that mean? Well, if, for example, you committed a crime or you committed fraud, misrepresentation, things like that, then, of course, you have other grounds of inadmissibility. But let's say none of that exists. Now, let's pretend you just take 1 foot outside the U.S. tomorrow. If you do, assuming you have been here illegally more than a year, which 99% of the people who will do this have been, you're not allowed to come back for 10 years. So they have what's called the Provisional Waiver of Inadmissibility, and they're allowing, and they have for some time, for you to actually be able to file that while you are here in the U.S. and to await hopeful approval of that. And then once the approval is done, your case would continue. You'd be scheduled for an interview appointment outside the country. And then if everything went smooth, you would only have to leave for, a week, 2 weeks, whatever, and then come back as a lawful permanent resident. Okay? So given that, what you would do is you would do everything necessary through someone who knows what they're doing to get the provisional waiver approved. Once that begins, the National Visa Center actually puts a hold on processing your case until the adjudication of the waiver. Once the waiver is adjudicated, if it's approved, then of course it proceeds forward from there. And then if everything goes well, you go to the consulate, but the reason they call it provisional waiver is if the officer finds you have been inadmissible on any other ground, then of course the waiver is revoked. You're going to be stuck outside and you're going to have to do a regular waiver of inadmissibility, depending on the grounds of why the provisional waiver was revoked. So hopefully this explains that you don't have to remain here in limbo forever. There are ways right now to proceed forward, and then, of course, new ways depending on the regulations from President Biden and, the agencies, and then we would go from there. Okay?